What surprised everyone wasn't the home run. It wasn't the 414-foot blast. It wasn't the 112.8-mile-per-hour exit velocity that immediately dominated sports headlines. It was something much smaller. Something most people would have forgotten. And yet Shohei Ohtani never did. Following the Dodgers' 2-1 victory over the Minnesota Twins at Target Field, the clubhouse was filled with celebration. Players were congratulating one another, coaches were discussing key moments from the game, and reporters were already preparing stories about Ohtani's leadoff home run that had set the tone for the entire night. Normally, a game-used item from such a significant moment would be quickly collected and handed over to team memorabilia staff. But that didn't happen. Ohtani kept the cap with him. While teammates celebrated around him, he quietly held onto it. Then, without drawing attention to himself, he slipped away from the crowd. Instead of following the rest of the team toward the clubhouse, he turned down a quieter hallway and headed in a completely different direction. Few people noticed. Even fewer understood why. Why would the biggest star on the field leave the celebration behind after such a memorable performance? Why would he focus on something everyone else had already forgotten? The answer began hours earlier. Long before the first pitch. Long before the home run. Long before the victory. Earlier that afternoon, Ohtani had been going through his normal warm-up routine. It was a demanding day both physically and mentally. The Dodgers were dealing with injuries throughout the roster, the pressure to win continued to grow, and Ohtani himself was still managing lingering discomfort in his left knee. During a brief pause in his workout, a member of the Twins' medical staff named Sarah Mitchell noticed him nearby. Without hesitation, she grabbed a cup of cold water and brought it over. It was a simple act. Nothing dramatic. Nothing memorable. At least that's what she thought. Ohtani immediately stopped what he was doing. He accepted the water with both hands. He thanked her politely. He bowed his head slightly. Then he smiled and returned to work. The interaction lasted only seconds. Sarah went back to her responsibilities. Ohtani continued preparing for the game. To everyone around them, it was an ordinary moment. One of thousands that happened behind the scenes during a Major League Baseball season. But for Ohtani, it wasn't forgotten. Hours later, after launching a home run and helping lead the Dodgers to victory, he was still thinking about it. Instead of heading straight toward the celebration, he walked through the stadium corridors and made his way to the Twins' medical area. When he arrived, he approached a staff member and made a request. He asked if they could find the woman who had given him water earlier in the day. A few minutes later, Sarah appeared. She looked confused. Concerned, even. Seeing the Dodgers superstar waiting outside the medical area, she assumed something was wrong. Perhaps he needed treatment. Perhaps he had suffered an injury. Perhaps there was a medical issue that required attention. But Ohtani wasn't there to talk about injuries. He wasn't there to discuss baseball. Instead, he held out the cap he had been carrying. Smiling, he explained why he had come. "I wanted to thank you." Sarah immediately looked embarrassed. To her, she had done almost nothing. It was only a cup of water. Just a small gesture. Part of her job. But Ohtani shook his head. "No," he said. "I felt like I needed to thank you." Then he added something that completely caught her off guard. "If you hadn't brought me that water, maybe I don't hit that home run today." For a moment, Sarah couldn't respond. She simply stared at him. Then at the cap. Then back at him again. Trying to process what she had just heard. One of the most famous athletes in the world had remembered a tiny act of kindness. Not only remembered it. He had gone out of his way to acknowledge it. In a sport filled with pressure, expectations, media attention and non-stop demands, Ohtani had somehow made room to appreciate something most people would have overlooked entirely. The emotion began to show on Sarah's face. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. After collecting herself, she shared something personal. She told Ohtani about her son, Noah. A longtime fan. Someone who had admired Ohtani for years. Then hesitantly, she asked if he would sign the cap. Ohtani immediately agreed. Taking the cap carefully, he signed it across the brim with the same attention and care he seemed to bring to everything he did. Then he returned it to her using both hands. A simple gesture. Respectful. Thoughtful. Unforgettable. What happened next spread quickly through the ballpark. The story traveled from the Twins' side of the stadium to the Dodgers clubhouse. Soon players were talking about it. Coaches were talking about it. Staff members were talking about it. Yet remarkably, nobody was discussing the home run. Nobody was discussing the exit velocity. Nobody was discussing the distance. Instead, they were discussing a moment of gratitude. A moment when a superstar stopped thinking about himself long enough to recognize someone else's kindness. Later that evening, during his post-game media session, Dodgers manager Dave Roberts surprised reporters. Rather than beginning with analysis of the game itself, he started by talking about the story he had just heard. And according to Roberts, it revealed something far more important than anything that appeared on the scoreboard that night. What impressed me most, Dave Roberts said, was that Shohei still had the mental space to think about someone else. The Dodgers manager paused for a moment before continuing. Of course, everyone knows he's polite. Nobody is surprised when Shohei says thank you. He's been that way since the day he arrived. He treats clubhouse attendants, trainers, coaches, security staff, and teammates with the exact same respect. But Roberts explained that this situation was different. Very different. Because context matters. And on that particular day, Ohtani had every reason to focus entirely on himself. When reporters asked about Ohtani's condition before the game, Roberts carefully described what the superstar had been dealing with. When you're performing at the highest level, he said, especially while managing physical discomfort and the pressure that comes with a difficult stretch as a team, something happens mentally. Players begin narrowing their focus. Their world becomes smaller. Their attention turns inward. It's a survival mechanism, Roberts explained. You shut everything else out. Every pitch, every swing, every movement, every adjustment. The entire day becomes a series of small battles requiring complete concentration. At that point, most players stop noticing the little things around them. They don't remember who walked past them. They don't remember who handed them a towel. They don't remember who brought them water. They're simply trying to make it through the game. Roberts admitted that he expected Ohtani to be operating in that exact mindset. Honestly, I thought that's where Shohei would be mentally, he said. Especially because he was still dealing with knee discomfort. The expectation was simple. Focus on recovery. Focus on performance. Focus on winning. Nothing else. But that's not what happened. And that's what surprised him. Think about it, Roberts continued. He played a game at the highest level imaginable. He hit a massive home run in the first inning. He spent hours preparing. He poured everything he had into helping us win. Yet somehow, after all of that, he still remembered a single cup of water. Not only the water. The person who gave it to him. The exact person. The exact moment. The exact interaction. He remembered her from a brief encounter in a busy warm-up area hours earlier, Roberts said. That's what amazes me. The manager then stepped back and looked at the bigger picture. We spend so much time talking about his numbers. His home runs. His exit velocity. His swing mechanics. His statistics. His records. The things that can be measured. The things that appear on scoreboards. The things analysts debate every day. But I learned something from this, Roberts said. Shohei isn't just different in the way he approaches baseball. He's different in the way he moves through life. That, according to Roberts, may be the quality that people underestimate most. Because even under extreme pressure, Ohtani somehow remains aware of the people around him. He notices things. He remembers things. He values things that many others overlook. Most players narrow their world when the pressure increases, Roberts explained. Shohei somehow keeps expanding his. The Dodgers manager shook his head as he reflected on the story. I honestly don't know many people who can do that naturally. And perhaps that was why the incident continued to resonate long after the game ended. It wasn't about a signed cap. It wasn't about a home run. It wasn't even about baseball. It was about perspective. Shortly afterward, baseball analyst Doug McCain discussed the story on his series recap podcast and connected it to something many people had overlooked. Something happening away from the field. Something deeply personal. Everyone keeps talking about the pressure of the season, McCain said. They talk about the injuries. They talk about the expectations. They talk about the knee. But there's another part of Shohei's life that deserves attention. Just days earlier, Ohtani had welcomed another child into his family. He had become a father again. And according to McCain, that changes a person in ways that are difficult to explain. I'm telling you, he said, becoming a parent changes the way you see the world. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But fundamentally. The priorities shift. The way you look at people changes. The way you understand kindness changes. The way you appreciate small acts changes. Suddenly, moments that once seemed insignificant begin carrying greater meaning. A helping hand. A thoughtful gesture. A few kind words. You begin noticing them differently. McCain suggested that perhaps Ohtani's decision to seek out Sarah Mitchell wasn't simply an example of gratitude. Perhaps it reflected a broader shift in perspective. The perspective of someone who had recently been reminded of how much small acts of care matter. Because parenthood often teaches a simple lesson. The biggest impacts rarely come from grand gestures. They come from small moments. A glass of water. A reassuring word. A helping hand when someone needs it. The kinds of things that seem ordinary until someone takes the time to appreciate them. And maybe that's why Ohtani couldn't simply walk away after the game. Maybe that's why he carried the cap through the clubhouse. Maybe that's why he searched for the woman who had helped him hours earlier. Because while most people saw a routine act, he saw something worth remembering. And in a season filled with pressure, expectations, and constant attention, that ability to recognize the value of small kindnesses may reveal more about Shohei Ohtani than any statistic ever could. McCain continued by connecting the story to something every parent understands. Anyone who has ever become a parent knows this feeling, he said. When a child enters your life, something changes. Not necessarily in a dramatic way. Not overnight. But your awareness becomes sharper. You start noticing things that once blended into the background. Small acts of kindness. Simple gestures. Moments of generosity that you might have overlooked before. You become more grateful. More attentive. More conscious of the people who quietly help make difficult days easier. And that's why, according to McCain, the interaction with Sarah Mitchell mattered. From Sarah's perspective, she had simply handed a tired athlete a cup of cold water. Nothing more. It was part of her daily routine. One of countless tasks she performed throughout a baseball season. She wasn't expecting recognition. She certainly wasn't expecting a visit after the game. And she definitely wasn't expecting to receive a game-used cap from one of the biggest stars in the world. But McCain believed the moment looked very different through Ohtani's eyes. To Sarah, it was just water, he explained. But to Shohei, it may have represented something much bigger. Because sometimes it isn't the object itself that matters. It's what that gesture represents. At a time when Ohtani was carrying enormous pressure, dealing with physical discomfort, and preparing for another nationally watched game, someone stopped for a moment and showed kindness. No cameras. No publicity. No expectation of recognition. Just a simple act of consideration. And in the emotional space Ohtani was living in at that moment, McCain believes the gesture landed differently. He had recently become a father again, McCain said. That kind of life event changes